Hi everyone, guys. I hope I'm audible and visible. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? So, very good evening. I hope we had a great day. Let's get started with the CUET grammar revision. I'll be just starting up in a while, just waiting for everyone to join in very quickly. So, when it comes to CUET, we have lot many things other than just the RCs we practice. Also, some grammar concepts and some of the critical reasoning concepts, which we haven't even touched upon yet, but we will be discussing slowly and gradually, right? So, when it comes to basic fundamental understanding, like how an argument works, how a premise works, and what all do we need to understand when it all of that we're going to learn today. So let me just pull in one of the interesting passages which you might have seen earlier. So we'll be doing grammar with some RCs, right? So move ahead to the next slide. Very interesting passage. Skeletons and how ancestors are related to it. Right? Let me know once you're done reading it. I'll take you to the next slide. Okay, we'll move ahead to the next slide. Very interesting passage again. Great grandfather of human race was a very ugly and unattractive mammal, quite small, much smaller than the people of today. You know, all of it talks about it. So not a very tough passage. Passage is very much relatable to what you have in CUET, right? Once we're done with this, we move ahead to the next slide. Okay, we'll move ahead to the next one. Please check this. Okay, next slide. All right, guys, check the questions now. Try this one, guys. This is rather more interesting question. Best supported from the information in the passage. Okay, let's move to the next. Try this one. Okay, guys, let's quickly discuss the passage and see how much were we thorough with the passage. So here, as I told you, any reading comprehension passage, it has three sections to it. So any RC has three sections to it. It has an introduction, it has the body of the passage, and last of all, it has the conclusion. Okay, these are the three non-negotiables of any passage, right? You always have an introduction, you have the body, you have the conclusion. When we say introduction, it's the claim of the author, where the author shares the briefing about the passage, right? Where the author shares, okay, this is what I am going to discuss, right? When it comes to body, it's basically the examples, the reasons, the analogies which are shared, right? And of course, the conclusion is where the author shares his opinion or the views. Okay, so any RC would have an introduction, body, and conclusion, the IPC on which it is based. Okay, and then when it comes to questions, when it comes to solving the questions in an RC, the questions have been divided into two types, that is direct and the indirect types of questions. When it is direct based questions, it's basically the fact based questions we are referring to, right? The direct based questions are the fact based questions we are talking about. Indirect questions are basically the inference based questions. Okay, these are inference based questions, right? So fact based questions are the ones which are directly asked, inference based questions are the ones which are imbibed, which are dependent on the insights taken from the passage. What insights am I drawing from the passage? Okay, so that is primarily important here. Now, since we're done with this passage, let's quickly have a look at it. Also, guys, once you're done with reading, you always try to calculate the GST of the passage. Okay, we always try to calculate the GST of the passage. When I say GST, it's basically the general idea, right? The structure of the passage and the tone and title of the passage. Okay, so it's mandatory to understand the general idea, the structure, the tone, to understand the entire passage. Understanding कि क्या है क्या exactly. Okay, so now let's have a look at the passage and see how and what has been configured in the passage. It says, we know very little about the first true men. We have never seen their pictures. Like, we know very little about them. Whatever we've read, whatever we've been through, anything what has been shared, it's basically very minute understanding of that passage. We do not know much about it, right? So we know very little about the first true man. Whatever the first true man was, we're not much aware of that person. We never seen their pictures. In the deepest layer of clay of an ancient soil, we have sometimes found pieces of their bones. All we've seen is there are bones. These lay buried amidst the broken skeletons of other animals that have long since disappeared from the face of the earth, right? So we just have read that there are animals whose bones have been found, but these animals have disappeared from the face of the earth. Anthropologist. Who was an anthropologist? Somebody who is trying to study who? Humans, right? Anthropos is humans, or it is mankind, right? Logi means study. So somebody who's trying to study the humans or mankind is an anthropologist, right? He's an anthropologist. So someone who's trying to study the humans or mankind is basically an anthropologist, have taken their bones and they have been able to reconstruct our earliest ancestors with a fair degree of accuracy. Okay, so anthropologists have taken their bones and they've been able to reconstruct our earliest ancestors कि पहले हमारे ancestors कैसे दिखते होंगे, कितना accurately हम उसको देख सकते हैं, वो सब उन्होंने जो भी उनके पास excavation से निकला anthropologists ने study करके एक on the basis of some hypothesis, some theories, they devised or they just constructed those earlier ancestors. You can consider them as like they're not exactly their mummies, but something that looked like them, right? The great great grandfather of human race was a very ugly and unattractive mammal, right? So if we look at the person who was first born of it, he was a very unattractive and a very ugly mammal. He was quite small, much smaller than the people of today. Heat of the sun and the biting of the wind had colored his skin as dark brown, right? So that is another thing he's talking about कि वो इतने dark थे कि उनको देख के लगेगा भी नहीं कि वो forefather थे, of our evolutionized, humans or who were like us. Heat of the sun, biting wind of the cold winter had colored his skin as a dark brown. His head and most of his body, his arms and legs too, were covered with long, coarse hair. He had very thin but strong fingers, which made his hands look like those of a monkey. His forehead was low, and his jaw was like the jaw of a wild animal which uses its teeth both as fork and knife. He wore no clothes. He had seen no fire except the flames of the rumbling volcanoes which filled the earth with smoke and lava. Right? So that is all we could see them with. And there it says he lived in the damp blackness of vast forests, as the pygmies of Africa do this every day. Like very day, they do it. That's how they lived. When he felt the pangs of hunger, he ate raw leaves and the roots of plants, or he took the eggs away from an angry bird and fed them to his own young. Once in a while, after a long and patient chase, he would catch a sparrow or a small wild dog or perhaps a rabbit. These he would eat raw, for he had never discovered that food tasted better when it was cooked. So earlier man didn't even know how it tasted to eat cooked food, right? उसको ये भी नहीं पता था कि cooked meal कैसा taste करेगा, right? तो उसने पहली बार जब taste किया तब he realized कि wow, it tastes so much better than the raw meat I was consuming every day, right? So that's when he was introduced to the cooked meat, right? Because he could roast it over the flames and then consume it, and that's what made him realize that he was actually not consuming the right cooked meal. Hi Shubhangi, hi Kavita, everybody guys, welcome back, welcome to the session. Glad to see you here, everyone. And then it says, like many of the animals who fill the zoo and these strange noises, early man liked to jabber, right? So you always like to munch and make those noises which we create when we eat, when we chew something. That is to say, he endlessly repeated the same unintelligible gibberish because it pleased him to hear the sound of his voice. So he always was pleased with his own voice, right? He fantasized to have listened to his own voice again and again. So he would actually just talk gibberish, repeat what he did, and he liked to listen to his own voice. That is to say, he endlessly repeated the same unintelligible gibberish. Like it was not something which had different context, different thing to say. No, the same context because it pleased him to hear the sound of his voice. In due time, he learned that he could use this guttural noise to warn his fellow beings whenever danger threatened, and he gave certain little shrieks which came to mean there's a tiger or here come 5 elephants. Then the others grunted something back at him, and their growl meant, I see them, or let us run away and hide. And this was probably the origin of all language. So, this last paragraph is actually trying to show us, it's trying to showcase how that human would actually make those noises, to warn the other co-mates about some kind of danger, some kind of warning, some kind of animal which was coming into their arenas, which was trying to encroach into their own, defined boundaries, which they were not really comfortable with, and something they were afraid of might kill them, like an elephant, like a tiger, right? So they were always creating those warning bells by creating that sound, even if it was unintelligible gibberish they were throwing at each other, right? Which meant, I see them, let us run away. Here come five elephants. That kind of sound. And that's how they actually need to interact with each other. They need that language. The origin of language is how it happened. Okay. What is the primary purpose of the passage? So I told you guys it's always good to understand the summary, the GST of the passage before you move to the questions. That is what we discussed. So by GST, I meant the general idea, the entire passage summary. S means the structure, the function, the role of each paragraph, and T means tone and title. Okay, so when you solve for GST, you are naturally solving for some of the questions which are hidden at the back. Like here it says primary purpose of the passage. So why has the passage been written? What is the main thing why the passage has been written? I want answers in the chat box. If you cannot answer, it is okay. Let's try to figure out the answers. It says to provide one possible theory for the origin of language, to describe the general appearance and some of the behavioral traits of early man, to compare early man with modern day pygmies, to discuss the views of some anthropologists with regards to the origin of early man, to discuss the food habits of early man. So, why and where this passage has been written, that is what we are trying to learn. Okay. So, to provide one possible theory of the origin of language की क्यों और कैसे theory language की शायद ऐसे निकली होगी. Discuss the food habits of early man कि क्या खाता था वो. खाने जैसा तो कुछ उसने नहीं बताया, है ना? Discuss the views, of course, मतलब food habits is one, but not the entire purpose. Discuss the views of some anthropologists with regards to the origin of early man कि कैसे originate हुआ होगा. Is there any kind of comparison with the modern day pygmies? No. General appearance and some behavioral traits of early man? Yes. Can we say B? How he appeared, what it looked like. Do we have some traits? Yes, we're talking about bones, how they looked, and then how he talked. Provide one possible theory. Yes, that's definitely there, but that's just one paragraph. Assertions being supported from the information in the passage. Some races of early man had fair complexion. Do you think we can consider this, guys? Best supported from the information in the passage. So first of all, you understand what is that, fair thing we are talking about. Fair complexion, blonde hair. So it can't be D. Pieces of the bones of early man had been found in the molten earth's crust. That's true, but how does it support? Early man made use of cooked food, used fire to cook food, though he ate most of his food raw. That's true, but he later on realized that. Early man had a lot of similarities with apes. Does the passage talk about it? Some races of early man had fair complexion and blonde hair. So what we can say is that yes, there have been pieces of early molten, early man have been found in the molten earth's crust. According to the information of the passage, which are the following could be the possible reason. Acha, this is about the animals, guys, not about E. So E भी नहीं होना चाहिए. Then had a lot of similarities with apes. Or if not apes, then it could be C. Okay. So better choice if we look at out of the two, had a lot of similarities with apes or made use of cooked fire, most of the food raw. Where have we talked about apes? We haven't, right? That means we connect with only C. So C is the correct answer. According to the information in the passage, which of the following could be the most possible reason? What could be the possible reason for the origin of language? Desire to warn others of impending danger? Yes. Desire to share one's joys and sorrows? No. Desire to have better comedy? No. Desire to collaborate in order to hunt? Or desire to understand one's surroundings better? It has to be A alpha. They wanted to warn others, कि ये प्रॉब्लम आने वाला है, थोड़ा देख के चलो, थोड़ा संभल के चलो, ठीक है. So this was the main thing why they wanted to just warn people. Okay, let's have a look at another passage very quickly in just 2 paragraphs. Another one, guys, here it is. Have a look at it, then we discuss it very quickly. Okay, we'll take you to the next slide now. Please have a look at it. Okay, let's have a look at it then together. What does the passage has to say? It says Fraser and Mosler assert that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. अगर हम मेडिकल ट्रीटमेंट्स को और अच्छे से कर सकते हैं तो हम जो रिजल्ट्स लेते हैं मेडिकल रिसर्च के थ्रू दैट कैन बी इम्प्रूव्ड. Currently, researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for the trials, substantially more than hospitals collect, thereby escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study, Fraser and Mosler contend that such risks never entirely eliminable from research. उनका क्या मानना है कि ऐसे रिसर्च को आप 100% कभी भी रिमूव नहीं कर सकते. Would still be small in most studies. Only in research or entirely new treatments are new and unexpected variables like to arise. अगर कुछ करेंगे भी तो it will be like leading to something new which has to arise. Fraser and Mosler propose not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients in clinical trials. One contention is कि भाई आप number of patients increase कर दो जो लोग enroll करते हैं research के लिए, thereby obtaining a more representative sample of the total population of the disease under study. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions can then be evaluated under normal conditions, broadening the range of trial participants. Fraser and Mosler suggest would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions. तो उनका क्या कंटेंशन है कि अगर हम अलग अलग पेशेंट्स को टेस्ट करके देखेंगे तो हमें थोड़ा डाइवर्स कंडीशन में, अलग सिचुएशंस में, अलग केसेस में क्या रिजल्ट्स होते हैं, we'd get to know. For example, value for treatment for progressive disease, something that increases or comes with time, may vary according to a patient's stage of disease. Patients' ages may also affect a treatment's एफिकेसी कितना एफिशिएंट है वो भी उसके स्टेज पे डिपेंड कर सकता है, उसके एज पे भी डिपेंड कर सकता है. Let's have a look at some questions very quickly now. So primarily the past is concerned with what? Identifying two practices. Describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive up cost. Evaluating analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. Yes, could be there. Describe proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. Explaining how medical research have traditionally conducted and how such results are likely to. No. It could be better to check C and D. Okay. Describing proposed changes on the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. More than what it is done, it is about what is being, done with some kind of suggestion. So D is a better choice. Which of the following can be inferred from the statement? Study of the category of patients refer to the lines 2020, study participation to patients who have no ailments beside these study. Finding might have limited applicability. It would be prohibitively expensive in its attempt. Would be the best way to sample the total population of potential patients. Would allow researchers to limit information collection about increasing the risk that information variables could be overlooked. Findings would be more accurate if it concerned treatments for a progressive disease than it was concerned for a non-progressive disease. Right? Findings might have limited applicability. I think A is a better choice, not even E. It should be A. Okay. So there are some questions, guys, which you'll find that they're definitely going to be there. And before you jump to the questions, it's always good to figure out the general idea, the structure, and the tone. Right? Just like we did in the first paragraph as well. Structure is more like understanding why a particular paragraph has been written. Okay. That helps us in understanding this paragraph molds around this. This is what is needed. This is how the conclusion turns out. Okay. So we'll keep the session till here. We'll be connecting very soon for the next session, probably on tomorrow itself. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great time. We'll be closing it here. In the meantime, if in case you guys have questions, you can drop them here.